Awesome. Thanks so much, Simon. And thank you all for joining me today. It seems like there are a lot of people joining in from wherever you're joining in from, wherever you're streaming from. Really appreciate it. If you want to add any comments throughout, I can see them. So I would love to see any engagement you might have. Just a tiny bit about me. My name's Anna Hoffman, and I work on the Microsoft team focused on Azure Data and Azure SQL and SQL Server. We're going to be talking about SQL from edge to cloud and how some of our customers are really kind of modernizing their existing infrastructure as well as building new exciting applications. And of course, we are all familiar that in this day and age, the ultimate tool is data. And over the past 12 months, we've all seen, well, really more than 12 months, we've seen a ton of organizations undergo digital transformation at record-breaking speeds. And with our global situation, being virtual and being ready to adapt to anything is very important. So for the course of this session, I want to take a look back in time, talk about SQL Server, how far we've come, and where we're going next. So let's go back in time, back to a day where I don't even think I was alive, for the first version of SQL Server, where we started on desktops. Now, over time, we cut our teeth as the #1 department server database, and then we gained a reputation with enterprises because of our ease of use and price performance. In 2008, we went boldly to the cloud as the first platform as a service database, and as the years have gone on, we've also embraced new operating systems and added new capabilities, for example, for built-in machine learning, for IoT scenarios, and more, really becoming a data platform as opposed to just a database. And all the while, we've been using the same SQL proven engine. We've been working on it, we've been enhancing it, and we've been bringing you all these different flavors of SQL. And we've come a long way. Today, the 98 of the top Fortune 100 companies are using SQL Server today. And while many of these organizations are still running SQL Server at kind of the core of their business, they've also started to adopt new application scenarios and new types of databases to which Azure Data Services have been really great for building on that innovation and what we continue to do as part of our SQL strategy. Really, at the heart of our strategy is SQL, is that SQL engine, that proven SQL enterprise engine. And we're bringing SQL from edge to cloud, including your T-SQL skills, your favorite tools, and everything you know and love about SQL. We want to equip you to reimagine the art of what's possible. So for the rest of this talk, I want to focus on some of the latest enhancements we've made to these 5 SQL-based offerings. And more importantly, I want to show you how these enhancements are helping companies on their journey of digital transformation. At the end, of course, I want to share a little bit of a sneak peek of what we're planning to do next, so I hope you will stick around. So let's start with Azure SQL Edge, which is our newest addition to the family of SQL-based products. It's going to offer the full power of SQL Server running at the edge, along with built-in capabilities for streaming, time series, and artificial intelligence. Now, I want to look at an example by a customer we have called 3M. Now, 3M is a brand that is a very familiar household name because it's unusual to find a work desk that doesn't have Scotch tape or Post-it notes on it. 3M produces over 60,000 products in various categories, including the N95, which has been really instrumental in our fight against COVID. Now, our team partnered with one of the US manufacturing plants and the 3M Corporate Research Lab to improve predictive anomalies. So this plant's network connectivity was very limited. Therefore, it was difficult to gather data and then transfer the data and then make predictions and send it back to those devices. The team decided to move to Azure SQL Edge for all the processing and artificial intelligence. So imagine the full power of SQL Server with AI and time series capabilities because we integrated it with Azure Stream Analytics and Azure Machine Learning Services, running on these tiny little edge devices all across the plant. Now, this really helped them with network connectivity because Azure SQL Edge allows you to run in a connected, semi-connected, or fully disconnected mode. And you can deploy these models to the edge so you can actually make decisions on the fly without being connected. So this is a very powerful example and a way that 3M was able to use this predictive maintenance to help fix problems before they occur. All right, moving on from the edge to your on-premises networks or your on-premises data estates. And I'm sure many folks are familiar with SQL Server and how we continue to invest in this platform. But in SQL Server 2019, we enabled things like data virtualization with Polybase. We enabled new intelligent performance capabilities, memory optimized HIMDB, and much, much more. We also removed the chasm that exists today between operational stores and analytics platform. But to talk about a customer, I wanted to focus on Itaú Unibanco, which is one of the largest banks in Brazil and the 10th largest bank in the world operating in the finance and insurance industry. All right, so their concern was that their infrastructure would not be able to keep up with their growth, and this would affect their SLAs and in turn their business itself. A good example is when they had to perform a rollback operation. This would take a long time. On average, this would take 4 to 5 hours, and recovery could take as long as 40 hours. So they decided to be an early adopter of SQL Server 2019 to take full advantage of some of the new intelligent query processing and accelerated database recovery benefits in 2019. With accelerated database recovery, they were able to drop their rollback time from 4 to 5 hours to a matter of seconds. We've said things like rollbacks faster than you can react. Additionally, intelligent query processing was able to make most of their queries run about 90% faster. And the cool part about that is this was with 0 code changes. So really powerful stuff coming out of the SQL Server engineering team, especially with regards to performance. Moving right along in our journey from edge to cloud, we move into the hybrid space. And Azure Arc is really at the cutting edge of this technology innovation. What we've done here is we've brought the best of SQL, Kubernetes, and Azure to run fully managed cloud data services in customer data centers or other clouds on top of their choice of hardware and OS. For a customer example, I want to talk about KPMG Japan. In Tokyo, there's a team called Ignition, and they're working on building out a next-gen cloud-native application platform to serve their clients called Cloud Next. Now, while they want to harness all the latest cloud innovation, KPMG's clients often require running their applications and storing their data on-prem or in multiple public clouds to comply with government regulations or company policies. Now, Azure Arc is going to extend Azure's management capabilities and data platform services to any infrastructure, on-prem or any public cloud. This enabled KPMG to basically build applications once and run them anywhere and manage them centrally from Azure. The built-in automated management services like self-service, provision, elastic scalability, backup restore, and automatic updates of their Azure Arc enabled SQL managed instance allowed them to save a lot of time and also keep their customers running on the most secure, up-to-date database platform. All right, so we've kind of been through a whirlwind of things in just a few minutes, but we've talked about the edge, on-prem, hybrid. The next thing I want to talk about is moving to the cloud. Now, Azure SQL, which we'll talk about what that means, but Azure SQL is the largest platform as a service in Azure. Azure SQL is not just hosting SQL Server in the cloud, but we have built it from the ground up. And I want to talk about a few examples of that, specifically hyperscale. But let's talk a little bit about what Azure SQL actually entails. So Azure SQL is really a brand that represents our 3 main deployment options of running SQL in Azure. Now, the first option is known as Infrastructure as a Service, or IaaS. Now, you saw SQL Server 2019, and you're probably familiar with a lot of other SQL Server versions. Hopefully, you're running on the latest, but with SQL Server and Azure Virtual Machine, it's essentially just SQL Server. So you pick the version of SQL Server, you pick the OS you want to run on, you pick the version of the OS you want to run on. You have access to everything. The only difference is that we are now managing the infrastructure and hardware underneath that virtual machine. So this is going to give you the full flexibility and the full capabilities of SQL Server running in Azure. We see a lot of customers using this to migrate very quickly to the cloud. For example, Allscripts was able to migrate about 600 on-prem VMs in a matter of weeks and move to SQL Server and Azure Virtual Machine. We're also working hard to give you as many benefits that are platform as a service like as possible with SQL Server and Azure Virtual Machine. We recently added ways to make it easier to configure your virtual machine to be, and your SQL Server to be the best for the type of workload you specify. And we've added new capabilities around creating availability groups and failover cluster instances very easily in Azure. So that's IaaS. Now, let's say you never want to upgrade SQL Server again. Well, for that, we have our platform as a service offerings. While these offerings are going to do things like abstract away the OS for you, by doing that, we're able to provide you a versionless version of Azure SQL. And this first one is Azure SQL Managed Instance. And we're seeing a lot of customers move here as they migrate to the cloud and want to get more of those platform as a service benefits. With things like Azure SQL Managed Instance and other PaaS services, you also get an SLA, or a service level agreement, so a guaranteed amount of uptime from us, or you get credit back. Now, Azure SQL Managed Instance is great if you need the full instance scoped capabilities. For example, if you need machine learning services, service broker, database mail, SQL Server agent, all these things that you're still using, that's fine. Azure SQL Managed Instance is going to support them. Now, let's say you don't need some of those instance scope features, or you're building a new application and you want to take advantage of the latest innovation in the cloud. Well, that's where Azure SQL Database comes into the play. This is an amazing service. This is the first service we came to the cloud with back in 2008 on what we called then Windows, Azure, and SQL services. But Azure SQL Database is just that. We're going to give you just a SQL database, and we're going to allow you to take advantage of some of the latest innovations that we're working on. One example of that is serverless. You've probably been hearing about serverless APIs and serverless applications, but we've developed a way to give you a serverless auto-scaling database. So you can essentially set the minimum and the maximum of what you want us to scale between, and we'll do that for you on a per second basis, only charging you for what you actually use when you actually need it. Now, when you're not using the database, if you want, you can set up an auto pause delay. And during the pause time, we're actually going to completely separate the compute from the storage and only bill you for the storage, which is going to result in huge cost savings. So this is a great example of how we're innovating, how we're thinking about re-architecting SQL Server to be cloud native. The other example I wanted to talk about is hyperscale. And instead of me just talking about it, I wanted to tell you about a customer we have called Hi-Rez. Now, Hi-Rez Studios is a leading video game developer. They have more than 70 million people playing worldwide, playing on PC, mobile, and console. Some of their popular games include Global Agenda, Smite, Paladins, and Realm Royale, and Rogue Company. Rogue Company, something called Roco, is their latest release, and they use Azure SQL Database Hyperscale for it. Now, this is that latest thing I wanted to chat with you about. Reason they wanted to use hyperscale is when a gaming company launches a new game, they don't know how many people are going to play. They could start with 5 players and then within days get to like 5 million players. This is not out of the ordinary. Now, Hi-Rez was looking for a database that was going to give them the full T-SQL surface area with extreme low read-write latency and, most importantly, unlimited scale. They took a big bet on SQL Hyperscale, which is our flagship cloud re-architected relational database. So we took SQL Server apart and put it back together to be a cloud-native solution that can scale vertically and horizontally to great limits, and hardware is no longer a limit. As a result, Hi-Rez was able to scale the same database from a few gigabytes to hundreds of terabytes in minutes. Now, if you're thinking about migrating to Azure, we have lots of tools to help you along that journey. Not going to spend a lot of time here, but I just wanted to highlight that we have custom guides at aka.ms/datamigration.com, or sorry, not .com, aka.ms/datamigration. And you can go there to essentially select a source and a target, for example, Oracle to Azure SQL Managed Instance, and we will give you step-by-step guides on how to do that. We are really trying to make this as easy as possible for you. Now, one customer I wanted to highlight here is a customer that took a phased approach to migrations. So H&R Block is a great example of this. Amidst some changes in the tax industry, H&R Block realized they needed to rethink how they use technology to serve their clients with a seamless experience. So they migrated to SQL Server 2017 running on virtual machines. Now, once they were up in Azure, they then were able to evaluate the platform as a service capabilities, and they made the move from virtual machine to Azure SQL Managed Instance. We're seeing more and more customers move into IaaS initially and then move to PaaS as they feel more comfortable and they're ready to get the full power of the cloud. All right, so the final thing I wanted to talk about, the final service I want to talk about before we get into the what's new and what's coming is Azure Synapse. Now, Azure Synapse is the first and only analytics system to have run all TPC-H queries at petabyte scale. This was made possible because Azure Synapse uses the same query processing engine that ships in all flavors of SQL. Of course, you'll have to go check out a Synapse session to get the deep dive on what exactly is going on here, but essentially we are evolving our analytics offering and bringing the next wave of innovation. We've taken our industry-leading data warehouse to a whole new level of performance and capabilities. You can see how we're bringing together enterprise data warehousing and big data analytics and integrating deeply with things like Power BI and Azure Machine Learning Services. Recently, we even announced a bridge between your data warehouse and your operational databases with Azure Synapse Link for Cosmos DB. So a lot of exciting stuff going on here, but really the main point, and it's illustrated with this customer called Grab Taxi, is that we're able to help customers reduce the time to insights. So we're helping you get intelligence over all of your data, and that's something that Grab Taxi was allowed to get, as well as added benefits because of the investments that we're always working on across the SQL platform related to security. All right, so we've talked about a lot of things. Before we wrap up, I wanted to give you a little look at the future. Now, there are 5 areas where we are investing as an overall team. The first is unifying SQL across cloud and on-prem. And over the next few years, we intend to totally blur the lines between cloud and on-prem. Azure Arc is kind of a great step that we're delivering on that promise and part of that vision, but we want to go much further. Today in Azure SQL, we run millions of customer databases, processing over 10 trillion databases transactions per day, but there's much more work that we want to do to meet the needs of modern developers. We're working on building out with modern frameworks. We recently announced some support for Django. We also want to enhance our JSON and graph capabilities and much, much more related to things like IoT, scaling, streaming, and more. Now, this is the most exciting one to me. We talked about hyperscale, which is giving you unlimited scale. We talked about serverless, that is kind of giving you that auto scaling, auto pause, delay, pay for what you need. And we didn't talk a ton about elastic pools, but this is a way of resource optimizing and cost sharing between mini databases. Now, we're working to bring the best of all these services into one single product offering. So that's something really exciting that we are working on. Fourth, we are always going to be investing in security. We've always been a leader here. Just to mention a few things, in July, we announced the general availability of Always Encrypted with Secure Enclaves. And in May, we announced the public preview for Azure SQL Ledger, where we're bringing the power of blockchain into your existing databases without all the complexity and with no extra cost. These are just a few examples of how we're investing in security, and you'll see more as we build integrations with Azure Purview, our latest data governance solution. Finally, I want to say that SQL Server is very dear to us. We're never going to slow down when it comes to innovating this SQL Server engine. I wanted to share one example of how we are leading innovation, and it's a project where we are rewriting parts of the SQL engine to remove the static variables in SQL code with machine learning models that can help adapt to your workloads at runtime. This is going to be transformational. There's no data platform that offers this level of intelligence. And this is just one example of how we're truly, truly innovating here. Now, I have a brief video I wanted to share. Maybe some of you all have seen it, and then I will give a few closing remarks. So hopefully the sound works. Let's try it.
Imagine a tiny particle drifting at the edge of the Milky Way. A single element that could solve the next big challenge. Imagine you had the power to reach across the stars and grab it. Our world is immersed in a galaxy of data. Data that connects us, cures us, enables us to do more. Data that helps us innovate wherever imagination takes us. In 1969, Apollo 11's guidance computer was limited to 72 kilobytes as it traveled to the moon. Now, we have exponentially more power in the palm of our hands. This precious resource demands a trusted partner to harness and make every bit of it intuitively accessible at the speed of our ideas. The speed of SQL Server and Azure SQL, the latest evolution of data management's highly secure, supercharged platform, enabling you to break performance barriers and boost agility. Azure SQL Database's hyperscale capabilities allow you to auto-scale dynamically. Advanced data security keeps hazards at bay with a single click, while built-in cloud intelligence eliminates worry. Machine learning services enhance the value of your data by importing adjacent code to create models faster than ever. And with cross-platform solutions like Azure Arc, SQL Server and Azure SQL products can be leveraged virtually everywhere. Our team is motivated to consistently improve this new breed of database without disrupting the application of our existing technology, as many of the world's critical systems and most influential corporations deploy it, and agencies on our most important front lines depend on it. Businesses like Bolzano that leverage SQL Server big data clusters to help radiologists interpret medical images, or Zeiss that use Azure SQL Edge to constantly improve the manufacturing of optical lenses, and organizations that help us dream bigger, like the Sloan Digital Sky Survey that built its ever-expanding database of 200 million galaxies and 260 million stars on SQL Server. Imagine what your data could dream up. Imagine unparalleled access to that next great innovation. Together, we can reach it at the speed of SQL Server in Azure SQL.
Yeah, I really like that video, and I think it kind of illustrates how SQL started as a relational engine, and over the years we have transformed it into a full-blown data platform. As you can see, many of these innovations are not restricted to SQL Server. We are taking them beyond SQL Server, and we are really looking to you to help us build the next version of all of these great things. With that being said, I wanted to say that even with the best technical innovation, none of our products can be successful without a strong community. Our philosophy has always been very community-centric, and so I want to spend a moment to say thank you to everyone joining, to everyone watching, to everyone contributing, giving feedback, and please keep it coming. We always love hearing from you, and we're always looking for new ways to support you. Thank you.